All right, welcome to the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show, powered by Big Hits Live and sponsored by the Influencer Council. I'm Dan LaForest. That is the Road Warrior, Baylin Trujillo. Baylin, week 9 is done. The U gets back on track.
Big win for the Hurricanes.
But really, we don't care about the Miami Hurricanes right now. You know what I'm saying? So
I only do when my guys commit there, so hopefully we have one in the next 2 years.
Well, we're going to see a lot of great commitments. We saw a big one we'll talk a little bit about later in the show. But we got a great show tonight. We're going to get right into the Week 9 results. We've got our new top 10 going into Week 10. We've got our Week 9 Dudes of the Week. And then we're going to have a great look at a lot of games that a lot of people don't expect us to even talk about. But our Cure All-Star Game of the Week is a big one, and we're going to talk about that too. But also, Baylin, we've got Larry Blustein joining us, which is always going to be a treat. So let's get right into Week 9, Baylin, and let's start with that Cure All-Star Game of the Week. One of our private schools, number 5 Masters Academy, takes out Oak Hall 49-22.
Yeah, I'm kicking myself in the foot on this one, Dan, because I almost had a perfect record last week with predictions, and I actually chose Oak Hall in this one. I don't know why. Obviously I looked at the record, didn't really do much research, and Masters Academy put it on him behind 2028 quarterback Jackson Stetcher in his first start. Blew these guys out, which is really good because now they're in the playoffs. So Masters Academy, if you guys don't know, their season's over. All the SSAC games are done, so now they're in playoff play, and this is a big win going into the playoffs. So shout out to Coach Garrett Kruzik and that staff for getting these guys ready. They finished with a 6-2 record in 8 games, and man, they really put on a show on this one. But like I said, man, I keep receipts, and I did not see this coming, so I'm excited because this is a big win for Masters Academy. But other than that, Dan, look pretty good on those predictions. Like I say, I keep receipts.
You know, at the end of the day, now let's go back, and you said something that kind of interested me. A 2028 quarterback, Bay?
Yes, sir.
So in other words, he's in 8th grade.
Yep, Jackson Stetcher, my boy. Bay, if you don't know him now, you better get to know him. All you coaches out there, if you want a game plan for this kid, he's the next up and coming. You know, there's not too many quarterbacks that I say that has that it factor, and he's one of the ones that has that. So be ready to see him in the near future.
Well, I'll tell you what, the SSAA playoffs do start this week, and guess who plays? Oak Hall has to come back down and play Masters Academy. Very interesting. Game ball goes to junior defensive end Mason Bartenheimer. I did not get the stats, but I heard he was all over the field. All right, let's move on. Let's go to our number 4 private school, Holy Trinity, big over American Heritage out of Delray Beach, 38-15.
Brogan McNabb, again, we talk about him every week. It's literally funny. The games that he's not doing well, they lose. So the only 2 losses this year, he didn't perform at the standard that he's been doing, and then he's right back to 3-4 touchdowns, and look at another blowout win under the resume. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see. You know, Holy Trinity at some point is going to have to beat good competition. I mean, they're rolling over these guys. They're going into the playoffs with some momentum in a couple weeks. But Holy Trinity, if you really want to compete, you know, you're gonna have to buckle down and do these against good opponents. But it's hard when you're really putting all your faith into one player. So shout out to Brogan McNabb, the quarterback over there at Holy Trinity. They took care of business over American Heritage.
Yeah, but Baylin, it wasn't even Brogan that had a big game. It was Kamar Fielder, the freshman running back with 13 carries, 127 yards, and a touchdown, and he gets that team ball. How about number 3, Melbourne Central Catholic, blanking Cocoa Beach, 38-0.
We need to talk about Melbourne Central Catholic more, I think. You know, I was actually at Oak Ridge today, and one of our deans pulled me aside and said, I love your show because now you're starting to give MCC some recognition. And I'm like, Melbourne? He's like, yes, sir. So we got to start giving them more of a shout out because they're doing something special over there. They've always been loaded with talent. Rashawn Scott, one of my good friends, he played at the University of Miami. So, you know, they've historically been really solid, but now they're they won district over Holy Trinity and they're rolling, man. And this was a big win. So shout out to MCC over there in the East Coast. But hey, playoffs are coming. So kind of the same issue with Holy Trinity. Let's start beating those good teams so we can represent Central Florida.
No doubt about it. We've been talking a lot more about those Brevard County schools. All right, our number 2 OCP takes care of business, 35-18 over West Oaks.
Cameron Curzon, quarterback, threw 2 touchdowns in this football game, but it was also the running back play for our dude of the week in game ball for this game. He had a sensational game. West Oaks, as we know, they usually run their independent classification and they win several state titles. But OCP, they continue to show that they're the big dog in the private school ranks other than Bishop Moore, and that's why they're rolling.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this dude all year long. Adrian Moraine, senior running back, 23 carries, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And our number 1 program, Bishop Moore, 59-0 over Deltona.
Bishop Moore reminds me of last year's Alabama team. You know, Nick Saban once said, he said, if you can honestly choose any of these teams that have better records than us, that they can beat us and they deserve to be in the playoffs. And Bishop Moore is now rolling. They've won 5 straight after starting off 0-3. Everybody's like, why are they still ranked in your top 5 private schools? Well, this is why. They are legit. They're beating public schools by 59 points. They're rolling right now. Bjorn Jensen threw 6 touchdowns in this football game. Unbelievable. Only 10 completions, so that means 4 passes weren't for 6. Man, I'll tell you what, I'm excited about this Bishop Moore team representing Central Florida heading into postseason. So great job to the Hornets, and this is why they're number 1 with 3 losses.
No doubt about it. And let's move on. Let's talk about one of our bonus games, and this was a good one. This is why we chose it. Spruce Creek knocks off New Smyrna Beach 29-28 in overtime, Baylin.
Yeah, I did call this prediction last week. I got it right, but I also called it being a blowout. This was a very good game, went to overtime. Spruce Creek did get the win. I do believe they're the better team here, but man, great job, New Smyrna Beach, for, putting it together and almost pulling off this upset. So Spruce Creek, that's a good momentum builder. They lost several games by big fashion to obviously big powerhouse teams like DeLand and University of Orange City and obviously Lake Mary. But my goodness, this was a good win for that program. And New Smyrna Beach now has a little bit of confidence, even though this is a heartbreaker. They can hang with some of these bigger dogs. So kudos to the Kudas, but they didn't get it done. So Spruce Creek with the 1-point dub.
Yeah, we had Luke Smith, too, gets our game ball. 20-26 for 292 yards and 4 touchdowns, Baylin. Other bonus game, how about Tavares? They got beat by Mount Dora 40-7.
Told you, Dan. Call this a blowout because they were reminding me of the Hurricanes because they're called the Hurricanes. So just like the Miami Hurricanes got a dub this week, so did the Mount Dora Hurricanes. And Tavares, you said a big point. The new head coach over there, one of your buddies, he's changing the program around, but they're not quite there yet, Dan. Like Leesburg, when they're putting it on them, Mount Dora just put them on them too. So
I don't disagree. Coach Hudson's done a great job last couple of years building up that Mount Dora Hurricane pride. And Jake Seepy, the junior quarterback, 15-26, 267 yards and 4 touchdowns in that game. This is one that we had an eyeball on, Baylin. Oviedo travels to Lyman, but they take care of business, 49-21.
Coach Jamel Jones, I talked to him on a daily basis. He was excited about this game. This was the game that they wanted back last year. They had a chance to win a district title just like this year. And I called it last week. The Lions are hunting those Greyhounds. And in order to get just a step further in his, in that program, rebuilding it and making it a power in that area, you got to beat guys like Oviedo. And Oviedo just continues to show why they're the district champs in that district. Again, Jackson Latour, I don't think we speak about him enough. He's a solid quarterback under Coach O's offense, and they're rolling. And when they're rolling, it can get ugly. And, interesting here, though, Dan, Lyman might play themselves into the playoffs even with these losses because of their strength of schedule. But Oviedo might win themselves in the playoffs in the first-round matchup with Jones High School. So be careful what you wish for. So it's going to be interesting. But take care of business and let the chips fall where they may. But, man, Lyman, they're there, and he's rebuilding 6-4, 7-3. Solid seasons, but you got to get over the big dogs if you want to put yourself in that category because I think they're one of the only programs that continue to make fun of us, Dan, for not ranking them. But until you beat these big dogs, you're going to sit where you are with those Greyhounds. So, but great job to Oviedo for winning district.
No doubt about it. They win the district, and we were just talking about them being 2-3 a few weeks ago. Look at them. Marquette Williams, a senior wide receiver, 7 receptions, 184 yards, and 4 touchdowns. All right. How about the Battle of the Crate? No.
Man,
this is the Battle of the Crate.
Yeah,
Dr. Phillips takes care of business 10-3.
They got their get back, Dan. They remember this game last year. The Hail Mary, the last second prayer, the touchdown from 60 yards off the back foot of Ole Miss quarterback Trevor Jackson. Insane. They marked this on their calendar last year, the Saturday after that game. They finally got it done. They brought back the trophy in a 7-point win. Now, I'll tell you what, I was a little discouraged watching this game. Not going to lie to you. They kept doing a quarterback rotation, didn't understand it. I don't call plays over there. And, I support everybody at West Orange. I love their coaching staff. They're solid men. But it didn't make sense to me why every series they switched out Jack Riley with the freshman. The freshman had several turnovers that were key turnovers. Also on the last play of the last drive to tie the game, he fumbled the snap. The ball went back 20 yards on a weird setup, which cost them the football game. They had multiple chances. I know UCF commit dropped the touchdown pass. West Orange had every opportunity to win this football game, but Dr. Phillips stayed true to who they are. They kept the ball out of their hands and milked the clock in the second half, which got them the 7-point win. So shout out to Dr. Phillips and the Panthers for winning this and also pretty much sealing up that district. So, Olympia got the dub last week, so they stole it from West Orange. I'll say that.
Yeah, and, again, Olympia, they can seal this whole deal this week when they play at West Orange, so this is going to be a big game. All right, this is an interesting one. Lake Nona takes out Oak Ridge 24-6.
Dan, I almost took my son and my wife to this football game. I thought about it. It's our rivalry game. I went to Oak Ridge. My wife went to Lake Nona. I thought this would be a cool opportunity for my son to finally see a high school game. But thank goodness I didn't, because this was all Lake Nona all night long. Oak Ridge had no chance in this football game. Both quarterbacks are out due to injury and illness. So it was all Lake Mary Lions. So that's just all I got to say about this. But Lake Nona, great job to them. And I love what the Coach Aubrey's doing over there. He's changing the culture. They're winning these football games. These are games that they were losing last couple of years, dominating. So great job, and hats off to Lake Nona.
Absolutely. And Joshua Perry, the junior running back, had a huge night, and they gave that big guy the ball 41 times for 222 yards and 2 touchdowns. All right, let's get into our top 10. Wekiva falls to Jones. And Jesus, can they score enough points? 68-41, Baylin.
Yeah, again, the score is definitely not the indication of how the game really actually went. Jones dominated this football game. They're up 27-7 in the first quarter. They were pretty much up 68-35 in the fourth quarter. And then Tyree Davis, the quarterback of Wekiva, went absolutely berserk in the fourth quarter. They just kept scoring and scoring and scoring. And I know that obviously backups had to play a role in this, playing some younger guys, getting them ready for the playoffs. But Wekiva, good showing in the second half. Jones is too much right now. They keep complaining about them not scheduling area schools. Well, every time they play an area school, it's 30 points or plus on them. So, Jones continues to roll, and look for them to make a statement going to playoffs, because I know they got one team in mind right now, Dan. With all these ranked teams out of the way early, they got one team, and that's that Edgewater game. So let's not look too far ahead, but that's where we're headed with Jones Tigers. And speaking of Wekiva, you better win or you're in or you're out. So these next couple games are very important for Wekiva.
Yeah, especially that last game of the season with the Mayor's Cup with the Popka. Vernell Brown gets our game ball, the third. He is a junior wide receiver. He's been the dog all year long, man. He's been unbelievable. 5 receptions, 101 yards, a touchdown, and a 51-yard punt return. Leesburg takes care of business again, beats they're a number 8 team, takes out Umatilla 49-7.
I mean, this is all we keep saying every week, mollywop. So I'm going to leave it at that. I mean, there's not much I can say about this other than mollywop. Every win this year, mollywop. So I'm just waiting for another good game like they did against Vanguard. The only thing that concerns me is Vanguard got completely throttled by South Sumter. So I don't know how quality of that loss is now for Leesburg going into the point system, because there's a weak schedule, because every team they played has been under 500, and rightfully so. And this is what the results are. They're just the better team of all the pretty bad teams that they can't get away from because they have to play them right now. But I hope Vanguard wins out so that they have a shot at the playoffs, because I do believe they have the talent and the skill level and obviously the coaching to get it done and represent Central Florida really well in the postseason. So Leesburg, just continue to handle your business like you've been doing. I just hope that strength of schedule, which is weak, very weak, it plays a part if Vanguard keeps winning. So
no doubt about it. And the thing is, though, is right now Leesburg is second in the district behind Vanguard. But how about Lavoctris Patterson, the junior running back, 8 carries, 119 yards, and a touchdown. All right, number 10 DeLand goes in and plays OC University. Baylin, they were undefeated, but DeLand takes that out 14-3.
Called it. I knew it. I thought the game was going to be actually more lopsided. Kudos to the University OC. They had a great game plan defensively. They contained TJ Moore the entire night, even though he's our game ball guy. But if you hold TJ Moore to one touchdown in an entire football game, you probably put yourself in a good chance to win that game. But DeLand just proves that their defense is the real deal. Shut them down. Only held them to 3 points, which is very impressive, especially with a team that was averaging over 29 points a game at University OC. So kudos to DeLand. They got the district title.
And let's talk about TJ Moore. He didn't do it with his arm. He did it with his legs. 22 carries, 118 yards, and a touchdown. Colonial falls to number 6 Winter Park, 62-6, Baylin.
Yeah. It is what it is. I mean, there's
Next.
really nothing we can really. Yeah. Next.
Winter Park, listen, they're undefeated. I don't see anybody on their schedule. They're the team that we're still trying to figure out. You know, we've looked at their schedule, but they keep taking guys out. We know how good their offense, but the game ball actually goes to the senior linebacker, Liam Glassmeyer, 10 tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, and a fumble recovery. Great job there. How about Seminole taking out Brantley 48-0 on the road?
Very impressed by this win, even though most people wouldn't be because of how bad Lake Brantley has been this year. I'm just impressed that they, one, shut them out, but they obviously scored 48 points. You know, this same team played Lake Mary, who's lighting it up, and they held Lake Mary to just 36 points. So, you know, this was very impressive, and they needed this win going into a matchup with Lake Mary this week, which, again, we're going to talk about a little later. But great job for Seminole. They got another shutout win, and, again, proves to be one of the top dogs in that district and sets them up for a district championship this Friday night.
Yeah, man. Carson Sequarius Lasky, senior quarterback, 11 of 14, 273 yards and 5 touchdowns. Lake Brantley is very young. I can't wait to see how they develop going into next year. The game that you and I are at, number 4, Lake Mary, goes to Apopka and beats them for the first time in a very long time, 49-21.
Put it this way, Noah Grubbs wasn't even born yet the last time they beat Apopka, which was 1999. So we're talking, 24 years ago, Dan? It's a long time. And Here we are. They put Apopka on a running clock. Apopka scored in the last play of the game. In a running clock, they were up 49-14. Now, it was close early, thanks to a pick six, a 99-yard pick six, which Lake Mary was looking to go 14-0. Yeah, took it to the crib. And then, obviously, later on, they had a big 60-yard run up the middle. But after that, you can forget about it. The next ensuing kickoff, they did a pooch kick. They got the ball. First play, they did a trick play, touchdown, and it was just onslaught from there. The Rams ran the herd, and the Eagles were soaring away from them. So I'll tell you what, man, this was impressive. I don't care how bad or how injury-prone Apopka is right now. When you put Apopka on a running clock, which I don't even remember the last time they ever were on one of those, this is quite impressive. So talk about momentum going into a district championship game. This is all you need. We said 3 games on Lake Mary's schedule that you circled. Actually 4, because Mandarin does matter. And they beat Mandarin soundly.
Mandarin was a key game in this cycle.
Yeah, that was huge. That's when some people became believers, is when they beat those guys by 18, which, by the way, was their closest margin of victory the entire season, which is quite impressive. But not to mention, we circled 3 games. Apopka, Seminole, Mainland. They just took care of one in blowout fashion. Let's see what happens Friday night in the district title game.
And that running back, junior running back, Isaiah Thomas, 16 carries, 108 yards, and 3 touchdowns, was impressive against that Apopka defense. Edgewater, number 3, takes care of Horizon 45-0.
Next.
Edgewater continues to roll. They're currently on roll to, they're on track to be undefeated for the 2nd year in a row. Mainland, Thursday night game, takes out Osceola 22-0.
Yeah, the only person I really want to mention here, obviously, is Dennis Murray, the quarterback at Mainland. But you know what? I thought, this score looks a little lopsided, but the game was actually a lot closer. Osceola had several key turnovers, caught a couple interceptions. They had opportunities to really score, make this interesting. They just couldn't get it done. Mainland's defense is that good. But I'll tell you, I saw some little spots in Mainland that kind of concerns me when watching the replay of this game, which shows me that they're not unbeatable. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward. But again, takes care of business and the W here.
I don't disagree. And Dennis Murray has really been the glue that has kept that offensive unit really functional this year. And he had an outstanding game. His senior quarterback was 9 of 13 for 105 yards, but also carried the ball for 93 yards and a touchdown. All right, that is up to our last game, Astronaut falls to Coco 63-0. And honestly, there was nobody on Coco's team that blew us away. They all got to touch the ball. And it looks like Baylin froze up, so we're going to move on. When we come back, we are going to have Baylin back. We're going to have Larry Blustein. You're watching the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. We'll be back right after this. All right, welcome back to the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. I'm Dan LaForest. That is Baylin Trujillo, and welcome. For the first time this season, we finally got on that dance card with the great Larry Blustein. Larry, how are you, my man?
Good. First Wednesday, I haven't had a game in 6 weeks, and I as soon as I found out there were no Wednesday games this week, I called you and said, let's go. Let's do it before they schedule one.
It's either that or they're tossing your radio show all over the place, but everybody knows how busy you are and the fact that you get out and see a lot of games. So let's get into that. Right now, Central Florida has a lot of very strong teams heading into this last 2 weeks of the season. Is there anybody that really impresses you as they come to mind as you start sizing them up against teams from South Florida and possibly from the Tampa and North Florida area?
No, definitely. Coco, obviously, even though they won't have a chance to play any South Florida teams. They already did, but because they're 2S. Orlando Edgewater, without a doubt. I mean, you know, you look at, although Homestead has played a lot better last couple of weeks, really gave it to Columbus a couple of weeks ago, doubled them up. So I think they're definitely in the mix. Them, St. Thomas, I think that it's them, St. Thomas, and Homestead are the teams that I think that really odds-on favorites in 3M. Obviously, we don't get Daytona Beach Mainland, good team in 3S. Certainly, I said, you know, one of the teams that I like, and we've talked about them all year, is Lake Mary. That's a program that's, you know, I mean, I think over the last couple of years, what they've done is amazing. And the way they took care of Popka last week, you know, Popka was my darling early on. And then you kind of convinced me that they didn't have a lot of veterans, and it's showing now over the last couple of weeks. Certainly, Lake Mary's way into the mix as far as 4M. Sanford Seminole, I think they could get a little bit hot. Good size, well coached. Obviously, first-year coach, but he's been with the system for a long, long time. So I think right there you're looking at teams in the area, in the Central Florida area, that have a really decent shot against anybody. I mean, and you know how I feel about Edgewater. I mean, they taking care of business at every turn, and I don't foresee them getting. You know, I was listening to Baylin just a minute ago talking about Orlando Jones, and you hate those teams like Orlando Jones, Baylin, because they could snip you in the butt come playoff time. It's just like in the South,
like
everybody's kind of watching the 3-win Northwestern team. If North Miami loses tomorrow night, then Northwestern is in, and they'll play New Orleans in the first round. And I'm telling you, you know, that's a team you don't want to see playoff time, especially when they're 3-6.
You know, Columbus actually fell this week as well, didn't they?
Well, Columbus, yeah, it was in the GMAC title game. I'll give them props. They were without their starting quarterback, and that makes a huge difference. He cracked a bone in his hand, he says it's healing, and they really won't need him probably into the second round, maybe the third round of the playoffs. So he has 5 weeks to kind of heal up. But New Orleans stacked the box on him. It was only 9-3 going into the fourth quarter, but Columbus just couldn't do anything. They tried to run the ball. New Orleans big up front, but I'm telling you, New Orleans a vulnerable team. You know, I went on one of the other shows in the state, and I said that New Orleans will beat Central and Booker T, and they did. But will they do it again? And that's the whole thing. Central was up on them 20-0. Booker T was up on them 19-7, and they lost their quarterback, who's back now. And that's another program around playoff time, guys, that you don't want to fool around with Ice Harris, because he's built that program right back at Booker T, and they're going to be a force. So, you take a look at, everybody in South Florida thinks that 3M could be either a rematch or an all South Florida final, like it was last year, going the 482 miles to Tallahassee. And that's a little zinger on people. And obviously, who's going to beat Chaminade? Probably nobody. And it's going to set up a pretty decent scenario, because they're 1-2 right now with Gorman. And at the end of the year, Bishop Gore, they have that Geico Bowl. In 2 years, I think last year, Chaminade went out and played it and got crushed. But it's a different Chaminade team. Obviously big, but that could be a true 1 versus 2 national title game. Like I said, in 3M, you can never count out St. Thomas. They're just really talented. They're big up front, well coached. And but yeah, that's probably the only teams. And I know that Edgewater probably stands in the way of another all South Florida final as well in 3M. So, and then 4, you never know. Columbus has played well. Palmetto's starting to play really well, although they don't have a running game and they don't have a defined quarterback. And I don't know how far you go, but they're 7-1. And then Western. That's another program that has done a tremendous job. But the one thing, and as well as I do, it's all the state of Florida. They never duck anybody. You look at Lakeland, and they played a pretty tough schedule this year. Edgewater took on, some pretty decent teams as well. And that's the one thing, guys, that, separates Florida from the rest of the country. Because, everybody will talk about how great their teams are, but the state of Florida will step up. And, a perfect example is a couple of weeks ago, Bradford County came down to South Florida. And, Baylin, you saw the way Zach Katz had matured, in the offseason. And Zach played really well. I just don't think people in South Florida understand how good Bradford County is. I mean, that's a program that obviously they have to go through Cocoa, which is not a very advantageous thing. But, it's neat to see those type of games where, earlier in the year, Jacksonville Trinity Christian and the kid Hurley came down to play American Heritage. It gives people around the state. North Miami Beach went to Niceville. They went to South Sumter. I like that. I like when, and maybe next year, with the way that Noah Grubb's playing, maybe you might see, a St. Thomas Lake Mary matchup next year. You never know.
Hey, I'm setting up a Cocoa Lake Mary matchup.
There you go.
See Brady Hart versus Noah Grubbs. That's gonna
beautiful.
Be lit.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, Bluestein, as I hear you talking about Edgewater. So you're telling me that Jones High School, who we talk about strength of schedule, which I would argue has a harder schedule than Edgewater, easily. You think even in that game they had 7 turnovers and they lost 34-13 or 34-14. They got beat pretty soundly by Edgewater with 7 turnovers and a quarterback controversy. You don't think that Edgewater has a chance against, or Jones has a chance against Edgewater?
Well, I said to you that, that's one of the teams along with Northwestern that you don't want to see in the playoffs, obviously. And you're right. Their strength of schedule is crazy good. But I think even though, things worked out the way they did in the first outing, I think Edgewater kind of has a little hair up their butt from what happened last year when they got dominated in the region semifinal. And I think they all remember that. And I think that they'll approach that game like they're both 0-0. And but you're right, though. But those are the type of teams, a team like Edgewater, a team like Northwestern, because Northwestern ducked nobody. They played Venice. They played Vero Beach. They played some really, and then they obviously had to play Central, and they played Norland and Booker T. So, yeah, those type of teams you don't want to see around playoff time. And I agree. I think it's going to be a rematch. And that's going to be a great game. Obviously, Edgewater will have a home field advantage, but sometimes that doesn't matter. If you run a 4-4 here, you could run a 4-4 anywhere.
Yeah. Hey, Larry, one of the teams we really didn't touch on was Daytona Beach Mainland and the job Travis Rowland's done with them, especially with having some of the talent that they have on defense. LJ McCray, 5-star, just committed to the University of Florida. Let's talk a little bit about Mainland and what their track looks like with 3S.
Yeah, well, you and I talked about this the other day, Dan. Obviously the suburb schools don't have a tougher road than a lot of the metro schools, but they'll probably, like you and I said, Rockledge, Jensen Beach, Fort Myers, Dunbar, and then ultimately it's going to be Lake Wales, maybe again in the finals. And Lake Wales is, as much as everybody wants to kind of count them out, they have won 23 games in a row. So, it's a pretty good program. I wrote on them today. They come back with a lot of talent, but you're right. Coach Rowland has done a great job. He loves that team. He loves that community. He knows it as well as anybody. And those years that he had to be in Palm Coast probably hurt him because he wanted to take that job, and he did. And they may not be quarterback-wise and a few other positions as good as a lot of these teams, but they're sound up front. You mentioned LJ McCray, who we had an opportunity to see this summer. Kid's a man-child. And I had a chance to watch him as a 4-year-old when his dad coached in South Florida at Boyd Anderson. And the kid was, you could see, one day that kid's going to be pretty special. But, and Baylin would know more than anything. Quarterback play is basically everything, especially when you come to the playoffs. You have to have some leadership. You have to show, unless you're a run-oriented team, like a Bradford County, they're a run-oriented team. Treasure Coast is a run-oriented team. But come playoff time, you got to get the ball upfield, because if not, defenses are going to get better and better. They're going to stack the box on you. And Baylin, you gotta start, stinging them upfield. And I'm not saying going long, but at least move upfield 10, 15, 20 yards and kind of bring the linebackers back on their heels instead of them going off the balls of their feet. So, I think that Mainland's smarting after last year. They certainly should have won that game, in the state finals. So, I think they're right there. I just think that if you take Cocoa and play them against anybody in Central Florida, they're so talented, not just because of heart, but Ryan coaches extremely well. They get the best kids in the area. Let's face it. If they want a kid, from Vieira, or they want a kid from Palm Bay, they're going to get them. And because of the schedule that they play, because they're defending state champions, I think that's a team that could stand toe-to-toe with anybody in the state. No doubt. Even Chaminade. They could, because of the fact they're so well coached, and Ryan doesn't look at opponents as, we can't beat them. And then, they came down and played St. Thomas, and if you know that story, they should have won the game.
They beat them. No, they beat them.
Yeah, exactly. So, I look at them, and, and you talk about having a schedule. Ryan just, he doesn't back off, and I don't blame him, because he doesn't want to hear the stigma when he wins state and he beats, Florida High, or this year maybe Bishop Verot, that, you play a small schedule. Well, they didn't. They stepped up against everybody, and they won. And they're going to be a team. And it's not that I'm stuck, Baylin, on Edgewater. It's just when you have a team like that so well coached.
For sure. No, I love Edgewater. I believe they're better than Jones right now, in my opinion. I just think the way that Jones is rolling right now, carrying on momentum, I wouldn't be surprised, let's just say, that if Jones beats Edgewater. But Edgewater is the real deal. So it's going to be an interesting matchup, and I'm excited for it. I know Dan's excited for it. But I do want to do what?
Go ahead, man.
No, I want to revert back to 4M, because we talk about Columbus, and what's interesting here about Columbus is there was a TikTok that went around it with the kids saying, there's not a team in Florida that can beat us. We're going to repeat back-to-back, and then all of a sudden they lose 2 games. So clearly there's some holes there. And with the quarterback with a broken arm, he is a special player in Mendoza. So without him, they are a different football team, in my opinion. So with that being said, if it trends in this direction, does this Friday night's game indicate who, one, will represent Central Florida, but two, possibly could end up winning a state championship with Lake Mary and Seminole? Because I believe the trending of where these two programs are, especially Lake Mary, because Seminole has to prove themselves this Friday, in my opinion, because of their two losses, one being Cocoa in a blowout fashion. But with the way that Lake Mary's trending offensively, if they take care of business on Friday, where do you see Lake Mary? And then obviously you have Western out there, which obviously a quarterback I trained, Davi, who's playing really well, sound football, what have you. Is Columbus, Seminole, and Lake Mary, are they the three dogs in that whole entire classification right now?
Yeah, definitely. And you could add actually Palmetto too, because they played extremely well. They lost 15-0 to Columbus in a game that was 7-0 at halftime. They had a 3-hour delay till they played the second half. Only because they sold the game out, and obviously they didn't want to lose that gate. But you're right. I mean, Lake Mary's, and I've rooted for Lake Mary. He's done a tremendous job. He really has. And, especially because they have, look at all the teams that they have in that area that could, if they, especially now with Rick Darlington starting to get, much better team. We know what Sanford Seminole could do. We know what Oviedo's capable of doing. I mean, they've had a really good program. So I know they're not in the same class, but I'll tell you what, you're right. I think you take Lake Mary, obviously down south, it's going to be the Columbus Palmetto game will be in round 2, and the Columbus or Palmetto game against Western will be around 3. And that's, 100%. Davy is playing real well, and he got a running back now, which kind of helps because that now teams aren't just, stacking it on him, and he's got wheels, and you worked with him, real good kid, headed to Virginia Tech. I mean, but right now of all the three teams, he's the better of the quarterbacks. But when Mendoza comes back, like they say, you can't teach 6'4", and he's got the size, and he didn't break his arm. He cracked a bone in his finger. Yeah. I was standing with him the other night at the game. Yeah. We were talking, and you know what? You give a kid like that, Baylin, a lot of credit because the quarterback that took over for him on that night, ironically, his father was a really good football player at the University of Miami, Joaquin Gonzalez, who was 6'6", 310. He came down between University of Miami and Harvard, so that'll show you the type of smarts in the family. Now, the younger Gonzalez did a good job, but he was 10th grade starting your first game against Norland. And Norland knew that, so they were shooting the dogs at him. And but I think if Mendoza comes back, and like I said, he won't really have to play now for almost a month. Yeah. So he could really kind of heal back up because, their first round will be, because they're going to go in probably as a 1 seed. Yeah. So they'll get an 8. Yeah. And then but the third round game or the second round game against Palmetto, he's going to have to be back in there because Palmetto's, like I said, they're really good. Palmetto beat Homestead 13-12. Columbus lost them 32-16. Yeah. I'm not really one to compare scores, guys, but sometimes you got to look at, at the facts. And but you're right. When you look at some of these teams, and as well as I do, quarterback play is everything. I mean, you could have a great defense, which is great because they set you up. But offensively, if you don't have a quarterback that's going to back that defense and get that defense, get their attention, it makes a huge difference. But, I agree. I mean, you guys have done a tremendous job with Noah, not only from a standpoint of his athleticism and his skill, but he's a great kid. You take a look at somebody like that, 10th grade. I mean, he, when I've had a chance to deal with him and talk with him, he's so mature beyond his years.
Larry, we've got a whole handful of them here. I mean, it's amazing to look at the 2026 quarterback play with Brady Hart and Noah and Tyson Davison and Darian Coleman and Michael Clayton. I mean,
Clayton too.
We're going to be 0.0 for the entire country when we start talking about top quarterback play.
Well, it should be like that,
guys,
Dan. It should be like that. You guys
listen.
have a loads of talent. You got somebody like Baylin who works with these kids year round and has a lot of the little clinics and camps and gives them an opportunity to expand themselves a little bit. When I had a chance to watch Baylin work when they came down to South Florida, during the off season, and kids respect that, and they like the competition. And I think that's why too. And you're getting better and better athletes. Sometimes I heard you talking about Lake Nona. You look at Toho. I mean, that Gabby's got a chance to throw 90 times a game. What kid wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah. Well, guys, we're going to keep moving on. We're going to take a 30-second water break. But the good news is Blue's going to stay with us. We're going to have our dudes of the week. You're watching the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. We'll be back right after this. All right, welcome back to the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. I'm Dan LaForest. That is Baylin Trujillo, and Larry Blustein stays with us. Baylin, let's get right into our offensive dude of the week. How about Isaiah Thomas, the junior running back out of Lake Mary? 16 carries, 108 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Also had a touchdown reception at 37 yards. He was a weapon for Noah Grubbs in that offense, wasn't he?
When I tell you one game can change your life, Dan, this was the game for Isaiah. Now, he had another sensational game against another quality opponent.
Mandarin. Mandarin
and
for 200-some yards.
Because of him, they shredded Mandarin. So in both their biggest 2 games this season for Lake Mary, which, by the way, their closest margin of victory was 18. That was Mandarin. Isaiah Thomas has scored at least 3 touchdowns. So he might be the key factor that people are not game planning against because they're so worried about Noah Grubbs and throwing that they're backing everybody out of the box, and now you're just handing the ball off to Isaiah and he's shredding him out. So now with the addition of Isaiah Thomas and the way he's playing, I think Lake Mary again is a complete football team, which makes a complete difference. And you saw it against Apopka, a team that normally does not allow this much rushing, and let alone a 100-yard rusher on that Apopka defense. I don't care if you have senior leadership or not. They're just always well coached defensively, and he made those guys look like little boys, like a Pop Warner football game. And so this was quite impressive. And I was standing next to Vanderbilt's, one of the recruiters, like you were, Dan, and he was impressed. He was shocked that this kid has 0 offers, let alone any Division I, but of course 0 Power 5, but no offers in general. So now when we talk about a game that changed your life, he was there and he wrote his name down at halftime. He called their head coach. They wrote his name down. You just don't know where these things go. And so when you put a performance like that, it could change your life, especially against a team like Apopka. So kudos to Isaiah Thomas, had 4 touchdowns, and Noah also had 4 touchdowns. So you could really gone either way, but this was way more impressive, especially against Apopka's defense.
Absolutely. Now let's get to our, and the other thing too is, man, his motor was going the entire night. Let's get to our defensive dude, Blustein-F the linebacker, senior linebacker out of Lake Nona. Actually, he's a junior linebacker out of Lake Nona. 16 tackles, 2 interceptions, and a touchdown. And guys, I watched his film. Blue, you got to watch this guy's film. He runs through cats. I mean, he is physical. He is somebody we got an eye on.
Yeah, this is sad because it's against my alma mater. So this kid's a specimen. He looks like a freak. He looks the part. I mean, you see in a picture right here, he's solid. He's cut, and he definitely dominated in this football game. Granted, Oak Ridge didn't have their starting quarterback, but he still made 2 interceptions, also scored 16 tackles in 1 football game. I don't care who you are, what level of opponent. That's really impressive here. So, Dalton, congratulations to you and Lake Nona. I know my wife would be happy because she's a Lion at heart. But at the end of the day, they got the dub over my alma mater. So congratulations, Dalton, and you are our dude of the week.
No doubt about it. And Larry, this guy, I think I made a mistake here. I believe he is a junior. And the other thing too is, Baylin and I were talking about, Larry, is the fact that David Aubrey, the new head coach at Lake Nona, first-year head coach, came from Dr. Phillips, another one of the Rodney Wells disciples, has done an amazing job. And I've seen the talent they have. Look out for Lake Nona. Can't hear Larry. Larry, your speaker's off. Your mic's off.
My bad.
There he is.
Yeah, no, I've had an opportunity. I saw them during the summer. Really good football program. And you're right. I knew Baylin and I had something in common where we both of our schools were the pioneers and probably have the same fate. I went to North Miami, and they aren't exactly lighting it on fire. But back in the day, Oak Ridge was one of those teams. They always had talent back. Probably before you were around, Cyril Wyatt, who was like one of the best football players that ever came out of Oak Ridge. Yeah, great program, but you're 100% right about Dalton. Dalton's his dude, throwback kid. You could tell when he plays. I mean, he's a warrior. You could just see his picture up on the screen. He's got the eye black, and he's ready to intimidate.
Wow, he's ready to go. And the fun thing is I get to meet him in 2 weeks. He's coming in the Orlando Touchdown Club with Shane Matthews and me. So we're going to have fun with him. Special teams due to the week. Dylan Edwards, the junior running back athlete out of Lake Howell, had a huge game in their big rivalry game against Winter Springs. The Tuscaloosa Tussle had a 70-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, guys.
You love this guy, Dan.
I do. I love this kid. I cannot wait to get him in the Cure game next year. He is something special, and you got to watch the film. I mean, he does a lot for Lake Howell.
Yeah. Then you got a cheat sheet. You get to go by that on the way home and watch a little bit.
Yeah, I get to do my morning walk and walk by these guys.
Yeah. Speaking of driving home, I'm literally passing Lake Nona High School right now.
So look at that.
They're defensive dudes. So yeah.
There you go.
You must have been coming from a long way, or that traffic is bad.
Yeah.
Well, guys, let's get right into the new top 10 heading into week 10, and let's go. How about Olympia back in at number 10 at 6-2? They are the district champions. DeLand moves up to number 9 with their big win over OC University. Jones slides up to number 8 at 5-3. We know the story with Jones High School. How about Leesburg at 8-1, Larry? Slides up to 7, and then the top 6 has not moved. Winter Park at 7-0. Seminole at 7-2. Lake Mary at 8-0. Edgewater at 9-0. Mainland at 8-0. And Cocoa at 7-1 at our number 1 spot.
Nice. You look at Leesburg, I mean, obviously smaller school, but this is their best start in 11 years or 15 years, actually. And you knew when they got the new coaching staff, that things would happen. And if you read social media, they're very active on social media. They promote a lot of their kids. And during the summer, they went everywhere. And that's the thing. That's the key. When you get a new program and you try to build them back up, like Rick Darlington did when he took over at DeLand, everybody knows his work ethic and what he expects out of his team. And you got to give Orlando Olympia a lot of credit because, in fact, they brought in kids, obviously, but that's not always the holy grail, because the kids that you bring in all have to be on the same page somewhere along the line, and chemistry is tough to build in 3 months. And so I give them a lot of credit. And as Baylin said before, you got to keep your eye on Jones because you know what? Their schedule is crazy good. They've got a lot of talent, and you got to feel this time of year that coaching staff's going to bring them around.
Let's talk about our private schools. Masters Academy stays at number 5 with their big win at 6-2. Holy Trinity stays at number 4 at 7-2. Melbourne Central Catholic stays at number 3 at 7-2. OCP at 8-1. They sit tied at number 2, and then Bishop Moore at 5-3 is our number 1 team in private schools.
Yeah, no doubt. Melbourne Central Catholic 2 years ago winless, but you get a coaching staff like they have. You get Day Farmer to come over and a couple of other players to come over, and they're looking a lot like they had 10 years ago. And Coach Hobbs does a great job. They've done a tremendous, and then you got Hurley Brown. He came back, Merritt Island state runner-up, went out to college for a while, and then he came back to Holy Trinity and has done some tremendous job. And Bishop Moore, they play a tough schedule, challenging schedule. As well as I do, Baylin, they got a really nice junior quarterback as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And also, we got to talk about that OCP team that hasn't lost to a private school. Their only loss was Bishop Moore. I'm really impressed with them. But guess what? At the end of the day, no matter how good you are during the season, no matter how much momentum you build, you still have to go through Trinity Christian up in Jacksonville. And that's a tough task to do, especially with Colin Hurley over there. It's going to be tough. But my goodness, what a great season they're having. And then I think Masters Academy, from outside looking in, not biased or anything, but based off their blowout win over Oak Hall, I think they're the favorites to win the SSAC or SSAA in their classification. I think they roll in the state championship in Garrett Kruzik's first year as a head coach. So a lot of exciting things happening in our private school top 5. And I think, Larry, you did a great job covering down and breaking down our top 10 after Dan announced it. I do think Leesburg has definitely changed the culture over there. 8-1 is really respectable. I just think with the weakest opponents and they're playing everybody under 500, that's going to be a tough task going into the playoffs. But my goodness, are they going to have a lot of confidence next year and the next couple of years building a schedule around teams that they believe that they're going to beat, like Mineola, like, any of our area schools, maybe a Jones. You might see them throw them on the schedule just for talks and whatever, or even Edgewater or Winter Park. I know that might be a good matchup. And looking from the outside, Winter Park really hasn't beaten anybody impressive. So imagine if they played each other with the rivalry there. You don't know how things are going to shake up. So I love the trending where Leesburg's headed, but my goodness, they need to start scheduling some bigger opponents next year and next couple of years.
No doubt about it, guys. And, just looking at our next up schedule, I mean, O'Galley right now is 7-1, Larry. Titusville has had – those guys have done an amazing job.
Best year in 42 years.
And really, I think Heritage – is 7-1 is the cream of the crop there. How about John Wilkinson with New Smyrna Beach at 6-2? Yeah. OC University, we've been talking about them all year long. They're at 7-1 in Oviedo. Talking about a bounce back. They had a couple losses at the beginning of the season, but Coach Greg Odiener has done a good job with the Lions, and them taking care of linemen the way they did was a big deal.
Well, you're 100% right with Heritage. I mean, really, really good program. Obviously, Coco is the king in that area, but they've done a tremendous job in Titusville. It's been 42 years since they've been like this, 7-1. They lost to Coco. Listen, everybody loses to Coco.
Guys, it's funny. I'm glad Bluestein just said it. All those 1 losses, Heritage, Titusville, Ugali, Coco. You got to get through Coco. So
that's true.
That's part of it.
Yeah. And
Baylin, one day I'm going to get you to pronounce it correctly. It's O'Galley. It's O'Galley.
They got to win first.
Yeah. Well, and
all right.
You
they're doing
made a great point, Dan, with New Smyrna Beach, Johnny Wilkinson. You can't help but love that guy. One of the best coaches, in the last 20, 25 years. What he did at Coco was amazing. And it's not so easy to win where they're at now, because you got Mainland right down the road. You got,
Spruce Creek.
So,
yeah, it's tough. Well, guys, we're going to get right into week 10. And we're going to have Larry Bluestein as our lead corso for this segment. So let's get right into it. And let's start with the Baylin Bowl. Let's talk about the Baylin Bowl. Oak Ridge at 3-4, at Boone at 4-4. Why is it the Baylin Bowl? Because Baylin played at both schools, Larry.
Man, this is an honor, but also
come on, Baylin.
Jeez, I hate this. I want to pick Oak Ridge, but they're not beating Boone. I'll say that. But go Pioneers.
Larry, who do you got in this game?
Yeah, Boone's looking ahead. They got Edgewater the final week. So
Battle of Barrel on the horizon.
Yeah.
And Darius Marshall has finally been healthy. So this is going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah.
How about Apopka? Now, I told y'all beginning of the season, Evans was going to play a factor before the season was over. Here it is. Apopka at 5-3 is on the verge of the playoffs, but they have to beat Evans at home 4-4. Not to mention the fact, anybody who's been around Central Florida for a long period of time, this used to be the Gurkey Bowl back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Blue, I'll let you take the first prediction on this one, man. What's your thoughts?
Well, here's the thing, and Dan knows that I was on the Apopka bandwagon early, and they've lost 2 in a row. So that kind of hurts a little bit. But I think that, and Evans too, Evans is a really, really good team. And, when that coaching staff went over there, you knew things would change. They tap into more of the Pine Hills kids, keep them home a little bit. And they have. I just think Apopka needs this. As my friend would say, they need this to be bowl eligible. So I think Apopka wins this game close, and it's going to be defensive oriented for Apopka. I mean, obviously, you can't hold Noah Grubbs, down to nothing like they usually do. And I don't think Evans has anybody near that way on offense.
I couldn't agree with you more, Blue. Yeah, I'm going to Apopka Blue Darters in a big fashion. I know you said close. I think they win by 14 plus here. I think Apopka knows the assignment that's ahead of them. They have something to prove. A lot of people, especially on Facebook and Twitter, are bad-mouthing Apopka after that blowout loss. They're saying that what's happening with his team, the coaching staff, they're finding every excuse to figure out what's going on.
Every excuse in the world for this.
I don't want to hear about it. Apopka's still Apopka, and I think they take care of Evans. And Evans, shout out to them having a good year, but you got to beat the big dogs. And this is a big dog, and I think it's just too much to chew.
and God forbid they win out and they get into the playoffs, even on a low seed, you cannot overlook the Blue Darters. How about First Academy at 5-3? This is a big private school matchup, Baylin. We know we love at Foundation Academy 5-3.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. This was a First Academy team we talked about early, and same with Foundation until they got blown out a couple weeks in a row early in the season. But they found their offensive rhythm behind Michael Dove, a guy that you just gave touchdown player of the week not too long ago. And First Academy, they're beating solid opponents. I just think when you look overall with both teams, I think Foundation is a little bit more battle tested, which is why I'm going to go Foundation Academy over TFA. But don't be surprised if TFA pulls some tricks behind Jack McKissick, who's also playing really well at quarterback, and Brooks Tolp. So it's going to be interesting, but I think Foundation takes this win, Dan. What about you, Blue?
I agree. Foundation has a better roster. They really do. They got a lot of really good kids, not just in the senior class, but loaded with the juniors and a couple of sophomores. I think they have a better roster, and I think that helps them be a deeper team, and I think they outlast First Academy.
Yeah, Baylin, you had one of the First Academy kids out at your camp a couple weeks ago. Is it Juju Anderson, the wide receiver?
Yeah,
he is one of my favorite athletes in the Central Florida area too. He's somebody to keep an eye on. All right, let's move on. Rockledge at 5-3. This is a district championship against O'Galley, 7-1.
I like this matchup, Dan. I like this matchup, Blue. But again, you have to beat the big dogs. And I know O'Galley, or however you want to say it, Dan, I know that
O'Galley.
O'Galley. I don't know why there's an E there, but O'Galley, okay? 7-1. Don't let records fool you guys. Competition matters. Rockledge wins this football game. I think they have the mentality over them. Rockledge has to start proving to themselves. Like Blustein said, I think if you look at the roster from both teams, they are a better rostered program with well coaching. O'Galley also has great coaching, but I just don't think that they don't have the athletes yet to really match Rockledge. So I like Rockledge in this, what we would call upset because of record, but I don't believe this is an upset here. I think they win the district outright. What are your thoughts, Blue?
A little disappointing in Coach Younger's team this year. I think they've underachieved. He always has talent. When it comes to quarterbacks, he's a perfect guy, obviously, being a former quarterback at Cocoa and FIU, and he's a really good guy. But I'm going to go with a surprise here. I think O'Galley, Coach Sands, a really good coach. He does have athletes. Yeah. I think you get an upset here, and O'Galley, wherever they are.
All right, let's move on. Spruce Creek, 5-3, travels to Oviedo and takes on Haggerty, who's 7-1 right now.
I like Haggerty here. I like Caden Mitchell. I like all about it. If you want to show that you are someone to reckon with in the playoffs, you have to be good opponents. Haggerty has beaten up on the little guys. Now it's their chance to prove themselves. I think they do use this momentum that they're going into this football game. I think Spruce Creek obviously got the 1-point win over New Smyrna Beach last week in overtime. I just not impressed right now. I was impressed early with the shootout with DeLand, and then obviously the blowout loss to Lake Mary, which everybody's getting blown out by them. But I think Haggerty does win this football game. It's going to be interesting. I do think it is close. I just think that Michaels has something special with this football team and Caden Mitchell behind that quarterback.
Yeah,
Larry, let me tell you something. I'm looking at this from a standpoint of you've got Andy Price against Steve Michaels. You have
there you go.
You have Caden Mitchell against Luke Smith. I think
Luke honestly has had a great year.
Hey, listen, if we didn't have our game of the week setting up here, I think this is it. I think this is our second game of the week for this week.
And you know what? Here's the thing. Spruce Creek has had a much tougher schedule. They've played some pretty big boys down the line. Now, early on, they didn't. And Haggerty, I believe, they've played okay, but they haven't really played anywhere near the schedule. But I'm going to agree with you, Baylin. I think Haggerty being at home, I think their familiarity, not having to make that hour and 25, hour and 30-minute trip,
good point,
across.
Good point.
I think that's Spruce Creek. Like I said, though, Spruce Creek is going to be in the game. It's going to be a close game. I just think Haggerty pulls it out at the end.
All right. This is the Osceola game of the week. Osceola, 2-6. Goes up against Sabby Masiak and Coach Paradiso at 5-3. We know they're not running the ball, Baylin.
Yeah, but they're going to need a lot more magic in this football game. Regardless of record, you throw this out the window. Osceola has never lost to Toho in their history. This is for the district championship, and it ain't going to change. The trophy stays with Osceola. The Cowboys win this football game. I think it's a blowout. The fact that Toho can't even beat OCP really scares me, regardless if they throw the ball 90 times a game. You're just setting yourself up for maybe 3-4 interceptions in this matchup because of the talent that Osceola has in the backfield. Obviously, Coach Diso is one of my favorite people, especially offensively. I love his offense. Obviously, I've said before, if my son had 3 coaches to play for, he'd be one of them just because they throw the ball every play. But I just don't think talent-wise, when you put roster to roster, regardless of record, I think Osceola is the better football team. Mentally, I think Toho hasn't got over the hump yet mentally to beat a team like Osceola, regardless, again, 2-6. We talk about schedules. Osceola's schedules is one of the hardest, if not the hardest, in Central Florida. They've gone through all the big dogs, and of course, they came out 2-6, -4 of those 6 losses. Tavion Swift didn't even play in those games. So now I think they've won 2 of the last 3 games with him being back, or 2 of the last 4. One of them was a Baylin game last week. That was tough. But at the end of the day, Osceola wins this football game, and I think it's 21+, Blue.
Yeah. When was the last time Osceola lost to a team from that county in that area?
Or when's the last time they didn't win their district?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll wait. This is a clock runner right here. You know, I mean, it just reeks of that. Osceola is so good. They just, as you said, Baylin, they've come across some juggernauts along the way. Like you said, Swint kind of adds a lot to the balance of the team. They're really, really good. I don't think this is close. And like I said, their supremacy in that area in Osceola County and has been just unmatched. And no, they're not taking a chance of losing to anybody in their area.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Osceola is against that team. You know, they have had injuries at key positions all year long. They finally are starting to get a little bit healthy, but how about a 3-7, 4-6 program that is going to get into the playoffs, Larry?
Yeah, they're winning districts, so they're in, Dan. Yep.
A dangerous 3-6, 7.
All right, I'm going to call this the LaForest Bowl, and I'm going to explain why. Eustis at 5-3 goes to Mount Dora 6-2. Why is it LaForest Bowl? Because I played Pop Warner in Eustis, and I played Little League at Mount Dora.
Wow,
this is a big game, Baylin.
It's only as big as you make it, Dan. Mount Dora for the win. That's it.
And I'll tell you what, these are 2 teams that have worked so hard in the offseason. They travel, they do things, they send their kids to camps. I've seen them at USF. I saw them at UCF. I saw them in Gainesville. And I will tell you this, Mount Dora has one of the highest team GPAs in the state. They're over 3.6 as a team. This is a smart program. They work real hard, and they need to keep their players. So that's why they take these kids around. I think Mount Dora wins. This is one of those neighborhood rivalries, as you know. I mean, and you better get to the Burger King quick because it's going to sell out in a few minutes.
I like and guys, if you haven't seen the stadium at Mount Dora, I think it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It literally looks like Clemson, like the bowl underneath. You go to the parking lot, you don't even see the field. Then you walk a little bit, next thing it's this big old dip, and all you see is just straight field and stands.
And Tavares is the same way, Baylin. I tell you, both of those stadiums are really cool. But I love what Coach Frank Scott said over at Eustis, and then Coach Hutch over at Mount Dora. I love what they've been doing, and that's going to be a fun game to watch. How about Satellite 5-3 at Merritt Island 5-3? This is another big game over Brevard County.
Yeah, I like the matchup here, but I'm going Merritt Island, and I think they win 10+.
Merritt Island's played a pretty decent schedule this year, and they always do. I mean, remember, they're 2 years removed from being a state runner-up. They have talent. They're well coached. Satellite had their little run a couple years ago, you know, and then obviously they graduated some kids. Their coaching staff is really, really good. I've had an opportunity, and that's one thing during the summer, I get a chance to see all these programs, and Satellite has kids who want to achieve. Merritt Island's just been that way. I mean, they're just the type of team that they could get on a little bit of a run if they get into the playoffs. Remember a couple years ago, they had to go through Rockledge. And, you know, so I think this year they come out on top, and certainly they'll be surfing at Ron John's this weekend.
All right, let's move on. News to Myrtle Beach, 6-2 goes to DeLand. Our fan poll, Baylin, has DeLand winning 92%.
There's absolutely nothing to talk about here. DeLand wins in blowout fashion.
Yeah. They set the table for next year when they're going to be a top 10 team in the state because they're loaded and Rick's not going to sit on his hands. And, if there's kids right now thinking about going to another school, you can bet that DeLand's going to be a destination. I agree. I love Johnny Wilk, one of the premier guys in the state as well. Great human being. I just don't think he's got enough horses.
Yeah, this is about one team having more dudes than another. How about number 2, Mainland? This is another big rivalry game. Why are we talking about it? Mainland's 8-0, Seabreeze is 3-5, and it's because it is a rivalry game. And Coach Lester Davis, big rivalry game against his old team. 96% of the fans, Baylin, say Mainland's going to take it away.
Yeah.
Dan, do we really even need to talk about this? USF and UCF were once a rivalry, and you saw where that ended up. UCF just kept beating USF, and it was ugly. So, yeah, Mainland, you call this a rivalry game all you want, but Mainland's going to win by dang near 40.
Dan, we found out a long time ago that rivalries are based on both teams winning, and Mainland has certainly done all the winning in this series. You'd have to go back.
I'm just trying to do my part, Blue, to keep tradition
I know.
alive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Mainland's not going to let the neighborhoods on the beach give them any blemish on their record. This is just, as Baylin would say, next.
All right, so let's get to that next. Let's get to the Cure All-Star Game of the Week from Orlando Health. Lake Mary, the number 4 team at 8-0, goes to Bokie to take on the Seminoles at 6-2. And guess what? The fan polls are dead in a heat lock here, Baylin. Now, Baylin and I are not even talking about this game. We're going to set the facts. Larry, this is your prediction. We're going to be broadcasting the game this Friday night on the Cure Bowl YouTube channel. Lake Mary has a high-powered offense. Seminole has an extremely talented defense. They know each other well. They don't like each other. This is the best of the best. And at the end of the day, Friday night about 9:48, we're going to have a district champion.
Yeah, you will. It's going to be Seminole. They're at home. They're bigger up front. I think they're going to control the line of scrimmage. Be a close game, maybe 27-24 type. Lake Mary's a really good team, but Seminole at home is a different story. That you go up there and play. Remember a couple years ago, they had Chaminade up there. They took Chaminade right down to the wire, 34-33. But I think Seminole, they're hungry. They want to show that they haven't disappeared. A lot of people think, they don't really mention them as much, but I think they win the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, this is going to be good, man.
Yeah, I tell you what, we're really lined up a great Week 10, and it's hard to believe, Larry, that we have 1 week after this. I mean, literally 1 week, and the majority of high school football is shut down for another year.
Yeah, well, as well as I do, football has the shortest season of any sport by far. Remember, you're on 4, you're off 8. There's not very many sports that have that. So, and you and I know as well, and Baylin, you too, when you get into this, there's so much more productivity in the off season with camps, 7-on-7s, combines, spring, summer camps, and everything. You kind of like the anticipation is brief because a couple of weeks ago, somebody said to me, we're already in week 7. I said, damn. This thing flew. And you have like 5 weeks until the state championship matches, and plus we're starting 2 weeks early in the state championship this year because they're usually in the 3rd week of December. Now we're in basically the 1st.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting. I think the matchups and the playoffs are going to be, once they release those, I think that's going to be extremely wild to see how that tracks, because I think we're going to see some teams that may end up in that semifinal matchups that maybe we didn't expect. That's why I love it, and especially with the talk that we've had over Metro Suburban, and now the new discussions, Larry, about this new classification system where they may go to a power ranking. There's nothing more exciting. People are going to complain about no matter what you do, right? But nothing more exciting about the potential of what we are able to offer.
Yeah. Now I want to go back and touch really quickly on that Lake Mary Seminole game. there are teams outside of Lake Mary and Seminole that are watching this game closely, like Columbus, like a Palmetto, like a Western. They're actually wanting Seminole to win this football game because their rankings go up and their seedings go differently. Because if Lake Mary beats Seminole, then everything kind of remains the same, and then Seminole drops into a unique situation because then you got that lingering Apopka, so they might have to see each other before they even see Lake Mary again. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out Friday night, and that's why this game is obviously the biggest game, if not in the entire state of Florida, let alone Central Florida. So everybody's eyes is going to be on this game, Blue. Dan, we're going to be there to cover it. I'm excited, but it's going to be interesting to see who really pulls for which team because the winner of this game does play a big role in their destiny to the state championship.
Yep, I agree.
Larry, I'm going to give you final thoughts before we close out the show.
Just, like I said, this thing went so fast this year. And, you kind of take a step back right now and see some of these teams like the Lake Marys, and you start looking the way that Baylin did at potential teams who had such a great schedule, but their schedule might not, or their record might not reflect it. The Orlando Jones type of teams, the Osceola type of teams, where they've played such a challenging schedule that some of their losses have prepared them. So when they go against an 8-1 team or a 7-3 team, they may have the advantage just because they've had a stronger schedule.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, we want everybody to have a great week, stay healthy because things are going to get wound up.
Yep.
For Baylin Trujillo and Larry Blustein, I'm Dan LaForest. Larry, it's great to have you back, man. Got a little deja vu of that other show we used to do a little while back.
Well, I'm excited.
You'll be back soon. Hopefully you'll come back here during the playoffs and help Baylin and I kind of sort this thing out.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime I can share the road with Baylin, it's a positive.
We're going to have to get Baylin a flashlight, almost, it's Halloween, so we can stick it up under here like this. All right, you're watching the Central Florida High School Scoreboard Show. We'll see you next week.